Hello guys, Annala Mooke here, and today we're going to be continuing the book series Emily Windsnap. This is book 2, Emily Windsnap and the Monster from the Deep. Chapter 1. Close your eyes. Think of the most beautiful place you can imagine. Are you seeing golden beaches, gorgeous clear blue sea, perfect sky? Keep your eyes closed. Now multiply that by about 100, and you're halfway to picturing what my new home is like. The softest, whitest sand, palm trees that reach lazily from the beach, tall rocky arches cusping the bay, a sea that sparkles like crystals in the sunlight. All thanks to Neptune, the ruler of the ocean. He sent me here with my mom and dad to start a new life, somewhere we could live together, somewhere our secret would be safe. One of Neptune's guards, Archibald, accompanied us here. He's a merman. He swam beside our little sailboat King all the way, swishing his long black hair behind him and occasionally ducking under, flicking his tail in the air, silver and sharp like a dagger. We edged slowly into a horseshoe-shaped bay filled with shiny turquoise water. Soft, foamy waves gently stroked the white sand. A few boats were dotted about in the bay, half sunken, silently slopping. Some were modern yachts, other great wooden crafts that looked ancient pirate ships. A tall, rocky arch marked the end of the bay. Through it, the sand and the sea continued around a corner. I caught my breath as I stood and stared. "Shake a tail, someone," Archibald called up. "I could use some help here." I leaned across to help him pull the boat alongside a wooden jetty as my dad swam around to the back and tied the ropes to a buoy. Mom was still inside with Millie. That's her friend from Brightport. Millie used to read fortunes on the pier. She did a tarot reading for Archibald before we left, and he liked it so much he invited her to come with us. They had to check with Neptune first, but Archibald is one of Neptune's top guards, so he pretty much was allowed to do as he likes. Then Millie said she'd have to let the cards decide, so she set the pack out in a star shape, sat looking at it in silence for about 10 minutes, nodding slowly. "Well, it's obvious what I have to do. You'll never catch me ignoring a call from the 10 of Cups," she said enigmatically, before throwing her black cape over her shoulder and going home to pack her things. Millie says everything enigmatically. I've learned to just nod and look as though I know what she's talking about. Archibald swam around to the side of the boat. "This is it, then," he said. "North Bay, All Points Island." "Why is it called All Points Island?" I asked. "It's right in the corner of the triangle." He stretched out an arm as he spun slowly around in a circle, where the 3 points meet. The Bermuda Triangle. I shivered. He told us about it on the way here, about the boats and planes that had mysteriously disappeared inside it. An ocean liner had been found totally intact but utterly deserted. 20 tables were set out for dinner. Another ship was found with skeletons on the deck, its sails ripped to shreds all around them. Others had vanished without a trace, often after frantic mayday calls from pilots and fishermen who were never seen again. I didn't know whether to believe the stories at first, but something had happened out at sea. We'd been sailing along normally, the swells rising and falling, the boat gently making its way through the peaks and troughs. Then it changed. The water went all glassy, the engine cut out, everything died. Even my watch stopped working. It felt as if the sea had frozen, almost as if time itself had frozen. Then Archibald yanked his long hair into a ponytail with some string and disappeared under the water. A few minutes later, we got moving again, gliding silently across a glassy sea. "That was it," he called up. "The Bermuda Triangle. That's what'll protect you from the outside world. Now, no one knows how to get through it except for a few chosen merfolk." He threw a rope onto the deck. "Well, a few chosen merfolk, and no, I better not tell you about that." "What? Tell me." Archie beckoned me closer. "I shouldn't really tell you this," he said, "but there's a raging current down there. Not any normal kind of current either. Oh no. This one's linked to something that lies deep down in the ocean, even below your island." "What? What is it?" "What is it? It's the biggest, scariest, most powerful—" "I hope you're not filling my daughter's head with more of your lurid tales, Archie," Dad said, suddenly turning up beside Archie. "She has enough nightmares as it is." I told Dad all about my nightmares on the way here, the ones I used to have in Brightport, swimming around in a fish tank surrounded by my old classmates, all shouting, "Freak, freak," at me, or being chased by a scientist with a big net. How many more nightmares was I going to have? Would I get to leave them behind? Would I ever stop feeling like the old odd one out? Archie lowered his voice. "Just be careful," he said. "The glassy plane marks on the triangle. But it's only like that on the surface. It's a huge well below, leading down to the deepest depths of the ocean. And you don't want to go disappearing down a hole like that." I rubbed the goosebumps crawling up my arms. We'd sailed on calmly after that, slipping through water that grew clearer and lighter every moment, melting from deep navy to a soft baby blue. I tried to push Archie's words to the back of my mind. Gradually, the island came into view. It was quite small, perhaps only a few miles across, a tall cliff at one end, a couple of lower peaks at the other, and a low, flat stretch in between. As we drew closer, I could see that the coastline was made up of long white bays fringed with tall palm trees and clusters of rocks and arches. It looked like a postcard. I'd always thought those pictures must be made up somehow, and that when you got there, you just find a clump of high-rise apartments next to a building site. But it was real, and it was my new home. "Where's your dad?" Mom joined me on the deck, straightening her skirt and bending down to check a reflection in the metal railing. I pointed ahead, "Helping Archie." Mom looked slowly around the bay. "I think I've died and gone to heaven," she murmured as she grabbed the railing. "Someone's going to have to pinch me." "I'll do it." Dad's head poked out of the water, a glint in his eye as he wiped the floppy wet hair off his forehead. Mom smiled back at him. A second later, the side doors crashed open and Millie clambered out. "Tell you something," she said, rubbing her large stomach. "That slippery elm mixture works wonders on seasickness." She covered her mouth as she hiccuped, "especially washed down with a spot of brandy. Now, where are we?" She squinted into the sunlight. "That's it," she said, pointing across to a wooden ship laying on a slant in the bay. It had 3 tall masts, polished pine railings, and a name printed on the side, Fortuna. "That's what?" I asked. "Your new home," Archie told me. I looked at Mom. "What's wrong with King of the Sea?" "That's our boat's full name. I've lived on it with Mom all my life." Millie pinched my cheek as she squeezed past me. "Well, your dad can't live with you on a regular boat, now can he? Don't worry. I'll take care of the place for you." Dad swam across the side, sitting across at Fortuna, flipping fins, "A little different from where I've spent the last 12 years, he said as he reached up to help Mom off the boat. "Dad was in prison before we came here. He's not a criminal or anything. Well, he broke the law, but it was a stupid law. He married a human. That's my mom. He's a merman. Makes it a little difficult when she can't swim and he can't go on land. But they managed somehow. She used to be a great swimmer till she was hypnotized into being afraid of water. Neptune did that, to keep them apart. She's still nervous about it now, but Dad started teaching her again." Mom hitched up her skirt and stepped across onto the jetty. It led all the way out to the ship, bouncing and swaying on the water as we made our way along it. I climbed aboard our new home. It was huge, at least 20 yards long, with shiny brown wooden decks, maroon sails wrapped into 3 night bundles. It lay perfectly still at a small tilt, lodged in the sand. It looked as if it had been waiting for us. I stepped into the cabin in the middle of the boat and found myself in the kitchen with steps leading forward and behind. I tried the back way first. It led to a small cabin with a bed, a beanbag chair, and polished wooden cupboards. Circles of wavy light bounced onto the bed from portholes to either side, definitely my bedroom. I ran through to the other side. Mom was twirling around in a big open living room that had a table on it, a comfy-looking sofa tucked snugly in the other corner. "What will we do with all this space?" she gasped. Sunny golden rays beamed into the room from skylights all along the ceiling. Ahead, a door led to another bedroom. What about Dad? I asked. How is he going to live here? Before she had a chance to reply, a large trap door in the floor sprung open, and he appeared below us. That was when I noticed there was trapdoors everywhere, leading down from each room into another below. The ship was lodged in the seabed with a whole floor half submerged, and so you could swim around in it underwater. You want to see the rest of your new home? Dad's eyes shone wide and happy. I inched down through the trapdoor to join him. Almost as soon as I did, my legs started to tingle. Then they went numb. Finally, they disappeared altogether. My tail formed. Sparkling and glistening, it flickered into life, sending shimmery green and pink lights around me. It does that when I go into the water. Sometimes I'm a mermaid, sometimes I'm a girl. That's what happens when a woman and a merman have a baby. I'd only found out recently when I went swimming at school. Thinking about the first time made me tremble. In fact, the thought of Brightport Junior High made me feel sick. Even now, I started to dread going there. School itself didn't bother me, only some of the people. One in particular, Mandy Rushton. Just thinking about her was enough to make my skin prickle. All those times she'd made my life a misery. Like the time she pushed me into the pool in front of everyone. I almost gave the whole thing away, and would have if the teacher hadn't sent us both to get changed. I can still remember her icy cold tone of voice as she hissed at me on the way to the changing room. I'll get you back for this, fish girl, she said. Just wait. I lived in fear of that day she'd get me. I'd have nightmares about it nearly every night. Then I'd wake up, cold and sweaty, and have to face her all over again in real life. At least I'd gotten her back in the end when I turned into a mermaid in the pool, right in front of her eyes. It was worth all the bullying just to see the look of the stunned silence slapped across her face that day. No, it wasn't. The only thing that made the bullying worth it was knowing I would never ever have to see her again. Bullies like Mandy Rushton were a thing of the past. A little bigger than the king of the sea, eh? Dad said as I lowered myself toward him. He took my hand and we swam around the lower deck together. The feeling of his big fingers closing around mine warmed something inside me that made up for the awkward silence between us. I couldn't think how to fill it. Look, he pulled me through an archway in the center, through purple sea fans that hung like drapes from the ceiling, fern-like and feathery, that swayed delicately with the movement of the water. Dad squeezed my hand. A couple of red and white fish swam through an empty porthole, pausing to nibble gently at the side of the boat before gliding between the drapes. One of them swam up to the side along Dad's tails. Glass eye snappers, I said as he flicked it away. Dad smiled. He taught me the names of all sorts of fish all on the way here. It was one of the few things we talked about. Where do you start after 12 years? I swam back to the trapdoor and hoisted myself up. Mom, it's amazing, I said as I watched my tail form back into the legs. Mom stared. She obviously hadn't gotten used to it yet. She'd only seen it happen a few times. Then Dad joined us, and Mom turned to sit with her legs dangling over the trapdoor, gazing at him. He reached onto her lap to hold her hands. She didn't seem to notice that the bottom of her skirt was soaking wet. She just grinned stupidly down at him while he grinned stupidly back up at her. I realized I was grinning stupidly at both of them. Well, most people don't have to wait till they're 12 before they get to see their parents together. I never knew it would make me feel so warm, so complete. I decided to leave them to it. They wouldn't notice if I went to explore. They'd hardly notice anything except each other since we set off to come here. Not that I minded. After all, I'd nearly gotten imprisoned myself. Getting them back together, I guess, they wouldn't mind a little time on their own. I'm going out for a while, I called, just for a look around. Okay, darling, Mom replied dreamily. Be careful, Dad added. I nearly laughed as I climbed out of the boat. I looked at out at the turquoise water and marshmallow sand. Careful? What of? What could possibly hurt me? Here. I walked along the beach for a while, watching the sun glint and dance on the water in between the ships. The sand was so white, Back home, or what used to be home in Brightport, the sand was usually a dirty beige color. This sand was like flour. My feet melted into it as I walked. I could hardly feel the ground. A gentle breeze made the sun's warmth feel like a hairdryer on my body. Wading into the sea, I couldn't help but glancing around to check that I was alone. Just habit. I still hadn't gotten used to the idea that being a mermaid didn't make me a freak here. Secret island where merfolk and humans live together. The only place of its kind in the world, protected by the magic of the Bermuda Triangle. There were some people up on the cliff behind me, standing in front of a cluster of white buildings. For a moment, I considered scrambling up the hill to join them. Then I looked out at the water and saw faces and then tails. Merpeople. I had to meet them. I pushed away a slight feeling of guilt as I turned away from the people and towards the sea. It wasn't the human folk that interested me. It was the merpeople I wanted to meet. As my legs formed back into my tail, I wondered if there was any other islands like me. Other on the island like me, half human, half mer person. That would be so cool. Either way, at least I could live here with my mom and dad without having to hide what we are. Shoals of tiny fish escorted me out towards the group, gliding and weaving around me. With thin black bodies and see-through fins, they led me along through the warm water, slowing down every now and then, almost as though they were making sure I could keep up. Wavy lines rippled along the seabed like tire tracks. A troop of silver jacks swam past me in a line, each one silhouetted against the sand below, the shadows doubling their gang's numbers. I flipped over onto my back, flickering my tail every now and then to propel myself lazily along, till I remembered I was supposed to be looking for the merpeople. I stopped and looked around. The island was a speck in the distance miles around. How long had I been swimming? The merpeople had moved on. A chill gripped my chest as I realized I was gliding over some dark rocks, hard, gray, jagged boulders with plants lining every crack. Fat, gray fish with wide-open mouths and spiky backs glared at me through cold eyes, like trails of seaweed stretched like giant snakes along the seabed, reaching upwards in a clutch of leaves and stems. As I hovered in the water, I could feel myself being pulled along by a current. It felt like a magnet, drawing me towards it, slowly at first, then getting stronger. I swam hard against it, but it was too strong. It was reeling me in like a fishing line. Blackness swirled around ahead of me. Then I remembered. The triangle. Everything sped up like a film on a fast forward. Fish zoomed past. Weed and plants lay horizontally stretched out towards the edge of the triangle, the well that led to the deepest depths of the ocean. My chest thumping, my throat closing up, I worked my arms like rotary blades, pounding it through the water. My tail flickered rapidly as I fought to get away. I swam frantically, keep going. But every time I started to make progress, the current latched. I'm going to try that again. But every time I started to make progress, the current latched onto me again, dragging me back out to sea. We were locked in a battle, a tug of war between me and what? The biggest, scariest what? What had Archie told me? What was down here? I could almost feel it, a kind of vibration or humming. Was I imagining it? Fear surged through me like an electric current, powering my aching arms for one final push. It was just enough. I was getting away. The current loosened its grips. The sea soon became shallow again and calm, as though nothing had happened, but I wasn't taking any risks. Catapulting myself through the water, I swam back to our bay and made it to the ship. Breathless, I pulled myself out and sat panting on the deck while my tail disappeared and my legs reformed. Mom poked her head out of the cabin. "You okay, sweetie?" she asked, handing me a towel. I nodded, too out of breath to reply. I rubbed myself dry as I followed her back into the kitchen. "Here you are," she said, passing me a couple of onions and a knife. "Might as well make yourself useful." Then she looked at me more carefully. "Are you sure you're all right?" Was I? That was a good question. I opened my mouth to answer her, but stopped when I heard voices coming from below deck. "Who's that?" "Oh, visitors, downstairs with your dad. They've been coming all afternoon." I gently shut the trap door. I couldn't face new people yet. I didn't even want Dad to hear what I had to say. I don't know why. Something to do with how happy he was, and the fact that he kept giving me all the smiley, lovey looks. Well, he would do that, wouldn't he? He hadn't seen me since I was a baby, and I didn't want him to know his baby wasn't quite so happy right now, or quite so sure about the new dream home of hers. I mean, sure, it was beautiful and everything, but there was something else going on here. I didn't know what it was, just a sense of something lurking or lying in wait. My hands shook as I started to peel the onions. Mom, I said carefully. She replied through a teaspoon lodged in her mouth. She says it keeps her eyes from watering. You know that stuff Archie told us on the way here about the big well in the ocean? But big well, oshik? She replied, the spoon waggling about as she spoke. What? She pulled the spoon out of her mouth. The big well in the ocean, she repeated. The one that leads to the deepest, darkest depths of the ocean, I added as a shudder snaked through my body. I felt something just now, pulling me out to sea. Emily, you're not going out there, she said, grabbing my arms. You could stay close to the island. The shudder jammed in my throat. It was really strong, Mom, I said quietly. Of course it's really strong. It's protecting the whole area. You know what Archie said. Do you hear me, Emily? I nodded, swallowing hard. Yes, I hear you. I'm not going to lose you, Emily. You promise me you'll keep away from there. She stared at me, holding my eyes with hers. I could see fear in them, and I was about to tell her I was fine and not to worry. Then I remembered what she'd already been through with me, how she'd followed me when I went out to sea to find my dad, and how Neptune nearly locked us all in prison. I guess she had the right to worry a little. I promise, I said. She pulled me towards her and hugged me tight. Good, right, she said. You silly thing, you're shaking. She squeezed me tighter. Come on. It's okay. Let's get these veggies done, and we'll try not to think about big wells in the deepest depths of the ocean, okay? Okay, I forced a smile. I'll try. We worked in silence after that. I couldn't think of anything to say. All I could think was that it would take more than chopping a few onions to make me forget the fear I'd felt out there, clutching and snapping at me like a shark, trying to drag me to the bottom of the sea. Hang on, I'm just checking. Okay. It changed fonts, if you were wondering. I think that may be a clear sign that it's a different character. It also has an M on it, so I'm assuming yes. M. Mermaids? Yeah, right. You're as bad as my dad. He thinks they're real too. Thinks he's seen one. He says it was on his way back from the fisherman. That's our local bar. Clear as day, he says. Well, that goes to show how reliable your vision is after 10 beers, my mom says. You couldn't even tell it was in the middle of the night. Clear as day, he said again. It's just an expression, love. Mom says he'll be seeing more than mermaids if he doesn't start pulling his weight. Then she gets mad at me for leaving my Girl Talk magazine lying around. That's the only time she seems to notice me nowadays, when she's nagging me about something, and Dad wouldn't know if I disappeared altogether. He hardly ever is around. It wasn't always like this, just ever since we heard that the town council is planning to pull down our home. We live on the pier, and they say it's not safe. The problem is, my parents work on the pier, too, so that's job and home gone in one swift swing of a crane. Our blast of dynamite, however they do it. The place is a dump anyway. I don't care what happens. Well, okay, maybe I do, but who cares what I think? I wish they did. So today, Dad charges upstairs at lunchtime. He usually goes to the bar, but says he has been somewhere else. Where? Mom eyes him suspiciously. Look, he says. He's got a magazine in his hand, a brochure. Mom takes it from him. Mermaid tours? She says, oh, for Lord's sake, Jack, when will you grow up? No, it's not, he blustered. It's just the name of the company, Maureen. It caught my attention, that's all. He grabs the brochure back from Mom and rifles through it, and as though he's looking for something in particular. I've been looking for something to take our minds off everything. I thought this might help. There, he says suddenly, opening it up and slamming it onto the table. Mom sits down to read it. I have a look too. Not that I'm interested or anything. I just want to know what the fuss is about, that's all. A cruise, Jack. Mom looks at him in this way she has, with her tongue in her cheek and her eyebrows raised so high that they nearly disappeared into her hair. We're on the verge of losing our livelihood, and you want us to spend every last penny we have, even haven't got on some ridiculous vacation? Dad takes the deep breath. Maureen, he says in a rumble. When he speaks again, he says every word on its own, like he's talking staccato. What kind of fool do you take me for exactly? Mom gets up from the table. You really don't want me to answer that, Jack. Mom, please don't. I start, but what's the point? She doesn't reply, doesn't even look at me. I might as well not be here. Hello, I'm here, I matter. Look, Dad suddenly shouts. Dad never shouts. We both look. He's pointing at the page. I'll read it to you, shall I? Before we have time to answer, he starts reading. Enter our exclusive contest, and you could win one of our superlative mermaid tour vacations. Every month, one lucky reader will win this fantastic prize. Just complete the following phrase in 30 words or less. Mermaid tours are the best vacations around because... ... Remember to tell us which of our fabulous cruise vacations you'd like to go on and mail the coupon to us. You could be our next lucky winner. Dad puts the magazine back on the table. Well, Mom says, picking up the magazine, a contest. Why didn't you just say so? I roll my eyes at Dad. He clamps his jaw shut and doesn't say anything. Mom and Dad are complete fanatics about contests, especially Mom. She thinks she's got a system. It works too. Our home is littered with teddy bears and toasters and electronic dictionaries she's won from stupid contests and magazines. We had 3 vacuum cleaners at one point. She even won a weekend getaway once. Not that I know much about that. She and Dad went without me. I had to stay at home with a babysitter while they went off to live it up in New York. I'll admit it. All right. It was the loneliest weekend of my life. I mean, so the prize was a vacation for 2, but couldn't they at least have asked if they could bring their daughter? Would it have hurt so much for the thought to have crossed their minds? But this is for all of us. And I wouldn't mind a cruise vacation, lying on a couch chair, an enormous ship gliding across the ocean, hot sun, warm pool, all the food I could eat, nonstop desserts, and no one to stop me from drinking so much soda as I want. I've heard about these vacations. It's all included. You know how good you are at these things, Dad says, edging closer to Mom. Don't try flattery, Jack, Mom says. It doesn't suit you. But I know she'll do it. She can't resist. I catch Dad's eye. He winks, and I smile back. Well, he's still stupid, believing in mermaids. Later that day, I see Mom leafing through the brochure. Look at this one, she says. I glance over her shoulder. Bermuda and the Caribbean. Experience the magic for yourself. Enjoy all the comforts and enchantments of a mermaid tour cruise. Swim with dolphins. Bask in year-round sunshine heaven. That's the one, I say. She nibbles the side of her mouth. Okay, leave me alone now. I need to think. She won't show either of us what she'd written. Says it'll jinx it. But something changes around the place after she sent it off. Mom and Dad get along. They even smile at each other occasionally. We all start talking about what we'll do on our cruise and what it'll be like. All of us, all in it together. It feels great for a few days. The contest ends in a week, but then the week's up and we don't hear anything. Another week passes, and another, nothing. We haven't won. Mom's luck run out after all. And gradually the snipping at each other starts again, and the being so wrapped up in themselves, and they forget to think about me. Back to normal, and underneath it all is a looming truth that no one's saying out loud, that we're about to lose everything. Well, why should I expect anything different? It's my life we're talking about here. Oh, I haven't told you my name yet, have I? It's Mandy. Mandy rushed in. And that is at the end of chapter 1. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you're into any of what I do, like video games, reading, cooking, in general. All right. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.